In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the movie Puss in Boots. Now, this is actually pretty interesting because I actually did not see the movie when it first came out. I actually saw it a year or almost a year ago. I saw it sometime in October of last year. I forget the exact date, but yeah, I think that's pretty funny. And this year also marks the 12th anniversary of Puss in Boots. This movie, that is. So yeah, that's something interesting I wanted to mention before I get into the review. But anyway, so without further ado, let's review Puss in Boots. That is the movie Puss in Boots. So anyway, the movie begins when Puss in Boots is explaining a little bit about himself. He explains different names he has, and one of them, of course, is Puss in Boots. And it's also revealed that Puss in Boots is actually a wanted criminal, and he even says at the beginning of the movie that he's trying to clear his name. And so that night he goes into this bar, and none of the people there respect him, and he comes in all big and bad, and they start laughing at him because he's a cat. But he shows them that he's no ordinary cat, and they tell him about these magic beans that he later on is revealed that he had been looking for his whole life, which actually he says that in that scene, but we get more of a explanation of his story with the beans later on. But anyway, so he had been looking for these magic beans, which are the magic beans from the story Jack and the Beanstalk, and he finds out that they're actually real, and they're actually now in the hands of Jack and Jill. So these people tell him where they are, and he goes to get the beans. And when he finds Jack and Jill, he's amazed that the beans are actually real, because, like I said, he'd been looking for them his whole life. Now, when he's about to get the beans, another cat comes in and causes him not to be able to get the beans. So Puss chases this cat, and there's even this scene where they have a dance fight, and when this cat has Puss at sword point, he hits the cat in the head with a guitar, and then the cat's identity is revealed, which it happens to be a girl cat, a really pretty girl cat named Kitty Softpaws, who is also a criminal. And then after Puss goes to apologize to her, once he finds out that she's a girl, he runs into his old friend Humpty Dumpty. And Humpty's actually the reason that Puss is known as a criminal, and we get more into that in just a second. So Humpty says that he has a plan to get the beans and repay their hometown, which again, I'll get more into that in just a second. But Puss doesn't want to do it, so he leaves. And then when Kitty is trying to talk him into it, Puss tells her about him and Humpty's backstory. So he tells Kitty that when he was a little kitten, he was all alone, and then he somehow ended up at this orphanage, and the lady that ran the orphanage took care of him. And there is where Puss met Humpty, who was also an orphan. And the two of them became like brothers, and they began to search for the magic beans together. And over the years, they kept looking and looking, but never found them. And then once they got older, they started getting into trouble. But when Puss saved one of the people that lived in their town, he's like a guard or something. And so anyway, Puss saves this guy's mother, and he becomes an overnight hero. And while his future looks very bright, Humpty's, on the other hand, not so much. But one night, Humpty tricks Puss into robbing the bank. Now, it's actually interesting because Puss actually didn't rob the bank, Humpty did. But Puss unfortunately gets in trouble for the robbery as well. So then, when the guards are closing in, Humpty is laying on the bridge and can't get up because he's, well, an egg. But Puss has a chance to escape, and being angry at Humpty for what he did, Puss decides to save himself, and Humpty gets arrested. And Puss leaves his hometown and now has a criminal background, even though he actually didn't do anything. And then, after that, we come back to the present, because Puss was explaining all this to Kitty, and it's actually funny, because once he's done telling Kitty his story, he sees that she's asleep. I guess she doesn't like backstories. In fact, before he even begins, she tells him that he didn't need to tell her his story. But anyway, so Humpty's able to convince Puss that he's sorry about what happened and he wants to make it right. So Puss agrees that they can work together and get the beans and then repay their hometown. So they try to get the beans from Jack and Jill, and that doesn't go very well, but they do get the beans. And then they go to plant them, and then once they plant the beans, the huge beanstalk shoots up and goes to the giant's castle. And of course the giant's already dead from the story Jack and the Beanstalk, which Puss actually didn't know that the giant was dead. But anyway, so they find the golden goose that lays the eggs, and since the eggs are so heavy, they decide just to take the goose. So they leave the giant's castle, and that night when they're celebrating, but actually even before that, it's revealed that Puss and Kitty actually love each other, and once they're celebrating, they're dancing together, and Puss even asked Kitty if they could, keep in touch. But Kitty doesn't really say anything about that. But then, the next day, Puss finds that Humpty and Kitty are gone, and then it's revealed that Humpty actually tricked Puss again. And so anyway, Puss gets locked up, and it's actually interesting because Puss actually never did anything wrong. Or at least, from what started all this, he didn't do anything wrong. So, yeah, that's really horrible. But anyway, Puss gets locked up, and then he finds that he's been locked up with Jack. And Jack explains to Puss that Humpty took the beans from him, and Jack and Jill were secretly working for Humpty. And he just set everything up, and it's pretty crazy how he set all that up once, you find out everything. It's like, whoa, that was a twist. But anyway, so Jack reveals to Puss that the golden goose that they took was actually the baby. The original golden goose was actually the mother, and she's this big giant goose. And Jack says that she'll destroy the town while she's looking for her baby since Humpty took her. And apparently he knew about that as well. So Puss is able to break out with the help of Kitty, and he goes to Humpty, and Humpty explains more about why he did what he did. And so Puss knows that there's still good in Humpty, and Humpty does try and make things right, and so they try and get the mama goose to get away from the town before she destroys it and get her back to her baby. But there's this one part where Puss is trying to hold on to the baby goose and Humpty, and to save the baby goose and the town, Humpty lets go of this rope that Puss was using to hold them both up, and Humpty smashes into pieces. But there's actually a golden egg in his place. And I don't know if he lived through that because he is seen at the end credits with the mama goose and the baby, so I'm thinking maybe he actually did survive. I don't know. But anyway, so the town is saved and the people start thinking of Puss as a hero. But the guards apparently don't think so, and at the very end, the guards are trying to stop Puss and Kitty, which kind of wasn't maybe the best idea. I mean, I wish that the guards would have seen that Puss actually was a hero just like the rest of the people. But I'm sure they eventually came around as well. So anyway, yes, this is a pretty good movie. Now, when I actually first thought about seeing this, I actually thought it was actually a retelling of the original story of Puss in Boots. I didn't know that Puss was actually a criminal until I read it, but how he started out being a criminal, I mean, I don't know all about his past, but just how this all started with him being framed is just horrible. But he's a hero now. He's known as a hero now, which is good. So yeah, this is a good movie. It does have its issues, but it's overall pretty good. And trust me, I wouldn't be reviewing it if I thought it was bad or anything. So yeah. Now, something else that I think is interesting, I should say a little fun fact I found out about this movie, is that, believe it or not, it's directed by the same guy that voiced Kowalski in the Penguins movie and all 3 Madagascar movies. And I thought that was so cool when I found that out. I'm like, what? And what's even more strange, or, well, interesting, I should say, is that I got into the Penguins. I first, saw stuff with them and Puss in Boots around the same time. So, yeah, I thought that was also pretty interesting as well. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and stay tuned for more. Bye!